All right, welcome back. I'm still here with Farmer Samson Ogbole, and we've been talking a lot about soilless farming, very interesting agricultural innovation, and it's something that a lot of people do not know about, and we just want to we want to go further. It's very interesting to know that we could have food production all year round, non-seasonal. We've been educated on that, been very educated. So, Farmer Samson, to the layman out there, what would you say soilless farming is? Like, just describe, why is it called soilless farming? Yeah, because initially you mentioned the fact that people saw it as being demonic. People saw it as, oh, this is just out of the world. This is the 666, like you mentioned, and a whole lot, I can imagine. So how would you describe to that person, maybe to that student who is studying agricultural science, to that biochemistry student, to that farmer out there, to that businessman who is considering, oh, I like to produce food all year round. I like to produce my tomatoes all year round, and beautiful tomatoes, of course. How would you describe soilless farming?
Use an analogy to explain soilless farming so that it's easy to understand. I remember growing up, they used to cook with things like firewood.
Okay.
At some point, firewood was removed. It now became charcoal, rice husk stove. Then from charcoal/rice husk stove, there was a movement to kerosene stove. From kerosene stove, it became electric cooker, then gas cooker, and so on and so forth. Now, you will agree with me that what kept changing was the way that they brought heat, right? So whether I was using charcoal, kerosene, firewood, gas, what was constant was heat. Because all the food needs to get cooked is heat, regardless of where it comes from. See that again like soil, like farming. What is the fundamental thing the plant needs to survive? Water and nutrients. Full stop. So whether that water and nutrient is brought into the soil or not in the soil, it's irrelevant. As long as it can get to the root of the plant would make use of it. First. Two, traditionally, we were taught that there are three types of soil. We were told there is clay soil, sandy soil, and loamy soil. And we were taught in school that the best soil for growing was loamy. Though nobody took time to explain why the other two failed. But if you look at soil as a component, soil has only three functions for plants. One is to act as an anchor to hold the roots of the plant in place. The second function of soil is to hold water. That is why you will hear things like, oh, let us do water holding capacity of the soil. When those days you will put some water, put funnel to check how fast the water drains. The third function of the soil is aeration, to allow air to pass, which is why as a typical farmer you don't kill earthworms on your farm. Because they burrow the ground, create airspace for air to come in. Now, looking at these three things I mentioned, if I take sandy soil, you will agree with me that sandy soil in itself cannot anchor the root of the plant. Sandy soil will not hold water, but sandy soil will allow air. Meaning out of the three functions of soil, it can only do one. So it failed. If I take clay soil will anchor, clay soil will hold water, but air will not pass. So clay soil again failed. But when you take the final one, loamy soil, it can perform the three functions. Vis-a-vis, if I say I am doing soilless farming, all I am asking is, what can I use that can perform those three roles, but it is not soil? So any material I can use but is not soil becomes soilless farming. And let me also add, so that in case somebody missed it, you would notice at no point did I say soil provide nutrients. Because it doesn't. How do we know it doesn't? If I go and take soil from the desert and I keep it inside here for the next 1 year, just leaving it alone, with nutrients suddenly coming to the soil? No. Which means the presence or absence of nutrients in soil is dependent on what is happening in the environment. Are there dead plants, dead animals? As they fall on the soil, they begin to decay. They start losing their organic and inorganic materials to the environment. And the water present in that soil locks those nutrients in and locks in the soil.
So what are these substances we use to replace the soil in the soilless farming?
There is rice hulls, that's shaft of rice. You can use coconut shaft. You can use perlite.
Would the coconut shaft hold?
Yes. You grind it into pieces, it becomes something that holds water very well.
Oh, okay.
You can use perlite, vermiculite. There are lots. You can even use water. It's about understanding the principle. That's all.
That's interesting. Very interesting. So, in my opinion, soilless farming seems capital intensive, right? Even though the soilless farming is very attractive, is a very attractive innovation now, funding may pose a serious problem. Can a small scale farmer engage in soilless farming and actually be profitable? Because remember, we're not just farming just for us to consume now, but for the profit.
Yes, a small scale farmer can.
Okay.
It's like I said, it's a technology.
Okay.
I need to know, what am I trying to get?
Yeah.
What do I want out of this? You see, a proper business is a business that it can be capital intensive to start, but it must be affordable to run.
Okay.
I'm sure when you get to go around the farm, you would notice you don't need to do weeding. The biggest issue today for the traditional farmer is weeding, which is taking their money and time.
Okay.
So it's about understanding first, what does the technology mean? What are the principles? Two, what do I have in my environment that I can get for free or for cheap to practice these principles? So I am not going to be thinking, oh, for me to do this thing, this is how it was done in UK. I want to replicate it verbatim.
Okay.
It becomes very expensive because you are importing everything you need. But if I can understand the tech, I can now say, okay, I can replace this with this with this, and which in a technology we call, generally we refer to that as your ability to adapt. So don't just adopt a technology, adapt it to your reality.
To your reality.
I know there was a place I went to one time, I can't think it was in the east or so. No, it was in the east or in the south. These people were trying to do nursery. And they heard it's important because normally they just broadcast nursery in the soil. You don't know how many came out and how many you've lost. And luckily it was a place where they had a lot of plantain. Rather than go and buy nursery tray, buy this, buy that, once they are done and the plantain is about dying, they harvest them and keep. And the plantain stock becomes their nursery tray. Because you put seed inside, the place is covered, the darkness needed. The place is cool. During the day it is hot, the heat needed to break dormancy. The plantain stalk has all the nutrients inside.
In it.
So it was indigenous, but that's because they opened their eyes to what is around them. So that you are not buying what you have a local substitution for.
Okay, so talking about our reality now, the farmer's reality, we see that soilless farm, it's more of a research-based innovation. So how does a local farmer, like you just mentioned, the plantain stalks. Now I think that's what they're called. They are being used for a nursery. I think that had to take someone who possibly had done a little research.
You just need to copy and paste what you see that is working.
Okay, so that the local farmer just needs to copy and paste whatever it is that is working for. You don't need to
go and start thinking, okay, what is the SI unit? No, copy and paste.
And for the soilless farming now, the climate change or whatever doesn't affect the crop yield. So I see that in your farm, while we're driving in, I noticed a lot of greenhouses. I guess that's what it's called. So can one practice soilless farming without a greenhouse?
Yes.
Okay. So
what is the greenhouse?
So what's the advantage here?
The greenhouse is just a way to control the environment.
All right.
If the environment I am growing works well for my plants, there is nothing to control. I don't need it.
Oh.
The second part of the greenhouse is it helps, gives you control over a biotic factor, that's living things that can affect your plant. So let's say, for example, I am growing pepper in a place that is infected with aphids.
Okay.
I know that the kind of greenhouse structure I must build must be such that the mesh net, that's the holes on the net,
Yes.
must be so tiny that those aphids cannot come in. But if I am growing the same pepper in a place where there is no environmental disease threat, I don't need a greenhouse. So it's understanding, what do I want to grow? What does the plant need vis-a-vis what do I have around to use?
Okay, so being that there are certain crops that thrive in certain parts of the country, right? We have certain crops that thrive in the northern part of the country, that thrive in the southern part. Like in the northern part of the country, we seem to know them for the tomatoes and stuff. Naturally, besides this, besides all these innovations.
So that's the question I always ask people around this is tomatoes a Nigeria traditional crop?
Okay, so that's something I haven't thought about.
No, it's just, so let me give you another way to look at it. Where do you have a lot of Muslims?
We have them a lot in the north and then some part of the west.
More in the north.
Part, yes.
A lot of Catholics. In the east.
In the east, yeah.
Pentecostal. In the south. But we were not originally, as Nigerians, Christians or Muslims. We had our idols. What determined the religion that people picked? It depends on the slave trade master that came to that region, and the religion they brought along, versus the seeds they brought along. So because it was introduced to them, we just assume, onions, northerner, cassava, southerner, tomato, northerner. We are doing tomatoes here, they are thriving. Why did we then leave tomatoes for the north for a very long time? Tomatoes does not like too much water. The north does not have so much rain. It looks like a match made in heaven. But I can now bring my tomatoes here, have a greenhouse covered to reduce the rain.
Okay, so because this goes to, I mean, this already answers my question. So this means that in the southern part of Nigeria, like in Akwa Ibom State, let me bring it down to Akwa Ibom State, where we always have to depend on the northerners to bring.
You can grow your own tomatoes.
So with the soilless farm, we could actually grow tomatoes.
You can grow your tomatoes, you can grow your pepper.
So we can replicate this even in River State, where we have lots of rain. We have lots of rain.
Yes. All you need to do is, now you're using soilless. There is a roof that covers. So even if the rain is falling, unless the roof is leaking, it's not touching the plants. So the plants are fine.
Okay, so the plants would only have to live on the water you give to them.
Exactly.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, so on a small scale between like 2 to 5 hectares, what would be the financial inputs to kickstart?
2 to 5 hectares in soilless farming is not small scale.
It's not small scale. Okay, so what would you call small scale in soilless farming?
1 plot or less.
Okay.
Because 2 hectares of soilless farming of tomatoes is almost the equivalent of maybe 30, 40 hectares on soil-based.
Wow.
So it's not small scale.
Wow.
A simple way I use it as an analogy.
2 hectares?
Yes.
Equivalent to about 30 hectares.
We'll do the maths. In Nigeria, a typical farmer gets about 5 tons per hectare for tomatoes.
Okay.
Which means if the farmer is doing 100 hectares, that's 5 times 100, that's 500 tons.
Yeah.
With soilless farming, even if you are just practicing, 1 hectare has 20,000 plants. Each plant will give you 2 kg, that's 40 tons. With 2 hectares, you are getting 80 tons. If you are able to maximize your yield and use indeterminate tomatoes, you get 10 kilogram per plant. 10 kilogram per plant times 20,000 plants is about 200 tons, if I'm not wrong. 10 kg times 20,000, 200 tons. Now, which means my 1 hectare is giving me 200 tons. Your 100 hectares is giving you about times 5. 100 times 5, that's 500.
We said
500. So, which means I need 2 hectares to get to 400 tons. Meanwhile, you are using 100 hectares to get to 500 tons.
That's really interesting.
So it's not because soilless farming increases yield. Let me clear that up.
Yeah.
It does not increase yield, because I've had people say that lie. Soilless farming does not increase yield.
Okay.
Soilless farming only allows you to get the yield that the seed was bred to give.
Okay.
Because with soilless farming, you are forced to do good agricultural practice. So when you buy seed from proper vendors, they will tell you, oh, this seed can give you SKG per plant. Soilless farming ensures that is true.
Okay, so how does soilless farming ensure that that's true?
Because remember that the plant does not have nutrient unless you bring it. Everything the plant needs is on you.
It's on you.
In soil, you don't even do soil test before you plant. So if you did not do soil test, how did you choose fertilizer? What if what you are providing is not what the plant needs? You will call people to weed. As they are weeding, they will cut a part of the plant. They didn't kill the plant, but the plant has been injured. So rather than the plant to be producing food, it is trying to cure itself. The plant is fighting off a whole lot of diseases and all of that. So, yeah.
So we'd say it's improved yield. It doesn't increase yield.
It doesn't. It just gives you the yield you are supposed to get.
Maximum yield. Okay.
That's all.
Yeah. And do we also say space?
Yes, it allows you maximize space.
Space as well.
Yeah.
You have to maximize space. So if we're going to be looking at it on, because all of this, besides the knowledge on how to go about financially.
So I don't give the finance, because I always tell people, study where you are.
All right.
Take for instance, I remember even one of my mentors, ambassadors, Debono Fora, made a statement yesterday. When we started the whole soilless farming movement, we used to import perlite and vermiculite from Kenya, which was pretty expensive. I'm not sure if you want to try it now. But we soon realized we could use cocoa peat and rice hull. A lot of rice mills around, we could go there and pick it up. And that reduced the cost drastically. Now, if somebody has said, go and bring 10 naira to be like 10 naira is too much. But when you suddenly realize, I can use rice husk, I will get the same job done. I can use cocoa peat, I will get the job done. So what is most important is understand the technology, the science. You suddenly start, I have friends. There is one of my great colleagues, Mr. Kaspari, that's Farinde, who is building greenhouses from wood. And it's working, because whether you use iron or wood, the plant does not care.
Yes.
If you understand.
Yeah.
So I have another guy that uses bamboo. But they are all getting, it's not because I used iron, my yield is more than their own. We are getting the same yield. The only difference is, maybe my irons can last for 50 years, 100 years. Their wood may not. But at bottom line, they've made money they can use to rebuild. So, yeah. Okay,
so our nation has become what you'd call a very high consumer-based nation.
Yeah.
It's so sad that we import food, even food that we can grow here. So how would how do you think the soilless farm innovation, how do you think it could possibly improve or increase our yield now?
First,
could it increase the yield enough to feed the nation now, where we don't have to import cherries, we don't have to import lettuce? In the fruit garden where we stay, virtually all vegetables are being imported, and I believe they could be grown here.
So yeah, can it help? Yes, but the first thing is we need to have a mindset change. The reason I say that is our import is not because we don't produce. That is one of our biggest misconceptions. Our import first is driven by we like foreign.
I don't think it's basically because we like foreign.
Do you think
we are producing enough?
Have you been to Benue?
No, I haven't.
Do you see how much food goes to waste? Nigeria does not. Now, I want to try and make it very clear so nobody gets it wrong. Our first major problem is not production.
Okay.
Our first major problem is waste.
Yes.
There is no year you will not hear how many trailers of tomatoes, pepper, onions that got thrown away in Benue. Visit my 12 markets. Visit the dustbin. That is food going to waste. Like real food going to waste. Why? A consumer believes that unless the fruit is fine, it is not healthy. So the farmer is forced to discard. So first, we need to have an enlightenment. I'll give you an example. If a young Nigerian enters a store and sees a polo, one has a good mark, the other one has made in Aba, which one will they go for?
Yeah. No,
So there is the culture of ours is not seen as good enough. A typical example is, as I said, doesn't look like I'm advertising any brand. There are different pasta makers. As people get richer, they move towards the foreign pasta. It is poverty that brings them to our local pasta.
So yet it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. And we need to first understand that, see, we need to support local. Am I saying everything produced locally meets international standard? No. But before that local can meet international standard, it needs to make money. As long as the local standard is not killing you. I was studying, was it China or Kuwait, what they did in the country to reverse their economy overnight, which was they didn't stop people from importing. Import as much as you want. But you get to the market, you realize that the one produced locally is just an example, is maybe 10 naira. The imported version is like 150, 200.
So you are forced to.
What happened was over time, people were forced to buy local. That is number one. Number two is, I always say, we don't need more farmers.
Okay.
Instead, we need to give the farmers that exist better tools. You go to, for example, Texas in the US. You see a single farmer, or maybe just a family of 3 or 4, and they are managing over 1,000 hectares of land. Why? They have equipment to do all the job. Now, again, I am not saying we should jump from where we are to that level. No. Instead, I am saying there are simpler tools. In France, for example, there are areas that have been earmarked agricultural areas. And the good part about that earmarked area is, if I go there to get land today, I don't pay for irrigation. Why? The government has installed irrigation underground. I just need to open, pay my monthly tariff, I have water on my farm. So we need to start thinking of this thing like a business. And to think of this like a business, we need to change the smallholder farmers' role. I am not one of those that believe in destroy them, let them go. No. Instead, we need to bring them up in clusters. Take, for instance, Ondo State is great in doing yam and cocoa. What if the government says, if you know you want to grow yam, we have cleared 10,000 hectares.
You all grow.
Come and grow. Because you are all in one place, your land preparation is cheaper, your productivity is better, you can learn from each other. Much more than that, you have a control of the market. So these are some things we need to start looking at. That farming cannot just be what you do in isolation, in silos. No.
Okay, that's interesting. So, lastly now, sorry, what's the role of the research lab in the soilless farm? Because I see you are research-based here.
No, we are not research-based.
Okay, because I keep seeing the research lab.
No, we are called Soilless Farm Lab. The lab part is not yet up.
Okay.
And the part of the lab we want, this is pure business.
Okay.
But the part of the lab is we want to be able to test our food.
Okay.
One, what we are producing right now, we work with a lab in Ibadan to test what we do. Number two, much more important than number one, is we want to be able to produce our seeds.
Okay.
Every time you eat tomatoes, pepper that are fine, all those seeds came from abroad.
Okay.
We don't have any single company in Nigeria that is a seed company. All the ones that are telling you they are seed company producing with their name having seed company inside.
Seeds.
They import, they are just resellers, they are repackaging.
Okay.
And it is shameful because the person that is not here cannot give you the best seed for your weather. It has to be us.
Yes. Okay. So the main aim is for improved seedlings, locally made.
Locally made.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Farmer Samson. I rather call you Farmer Samson. Thank you, Farmer Samson, for this very educative. I've learned a lot, and I believe everyone out there has learned a lot, and it's been very motivating and inspiring. Thank you so much to see all that you have been able to do here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So we'll be going round the farm to see how far he's gone.